My next guest is one man who has taken his calling very, very seriously, and he's spreading the good word to anyone who will listen. His name is Guardian Angel, and he's here. Everybody, please welcome him to the show. Hello. How are you?
Good. It's good to see you.
Thank you for being here.
Asante.
How only?
Sarama. Fito kabisa.
Guardian Angel. What a good name to have.
Thank you.
What a good name to have.
Asante.
Your jina ilitoka wapi?
Guardian Angel is a name I used to pray about when I started music.
Okay.
And I just felt I would want to involve God even in my name.
Okay.
So I asked God for a name, for a stage name. Yeah, so.
And that name came.
Yeah.
And the rest is history. How many years ago was this?
This is now 7 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you have been in the industry for a number of years.
Yeah.
7 years.
Yeah.
But you know, people don't, the 7 years is when I guess we can say we knew you. But before we got to know who Guardian Angel was, before we ever heard your first hit, who was the man behind the music?
Before that is of course high school. And before high school is streets. Yeah.
Yeah.
And before streets is that very tough life, yani, in the slums, uko Kibera. And before that was rejection.
Okay. I'm going to take each of those things you've told me and you're going to elaborate on that story.
Yeah.
So, the streets. Tell me a little bit about when you say that, you know, life was tough and you were on the street. Tell me about that.
Us guys used to live in Kibera that time with my mom. My mom is a nurse by profession, but she happened to had lost her job that time.
Yeah.
So, us guys were forced to go in a place to afford. That time I remember our house rent was 300 bob, but us guys could not afford even that 300.
Wow.
Remember, sometimes it used to rain. It would rain, and then the sewages would burst. So that water would burst through the house.
Oh no.
And I used to sleep on the floor. So sometimes it would rain at night and I would have to get up, sleep on my mother's bed, have my mother sit until it stops raining. And then if it stops, tunarudi tena kwa ile system ya kudoze. Ikiendelea tena.
Yeah, evil too. Your cycle. You're depending on the weather. You don't know what's going to happen.
So it got to a place where I couldn't take it anymore because it was so painful. You know, looking at my mother have to, you know, go through all that she went through. And of course, sometimes she would remind me how my dad rejected me. She would remind me sometimes how she's not the only one, you know.
Yeah.
Because of course, unajua kuna ile time unafilia uchungu. Mbona ni mimi nateseka na huyu jamaa peke yetu, you know.
Anakukumbusha sisi peke yetu
sio mimi anakukumbusha si yeye peke yake alikuzaa pia buda alikuwa.
How did that make you feel at that time as a young man?
Of course it used to feel so bad.
Yeah.
And of course you want to think why did this guy reject me even before he saw me, you know. And so I decided to go to the streets.
Okay.
So I went to the streets. Nilihepa home nikaenda.
Uliacha madhe?
Yeah.
For how long?
For like 1.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And how was that, the living in the streets, leaving your mom behind, living out there not knowing where anything was going to come from?
Of course it was a bit of a relief, you know, from, you know, what I have been seeing her go through.
Yeah.
Any place. Sasa niko peke yangu. Wacha mimi nisafa kiman,
Ndio. Na sasa umemtolea hiyo shida ya
hata have to after food and stuff. So street haikuwa rahisi, but compared to the life I used to live with my mother and that emotional, you know, feeling that I used to go through when I was with my mother, I preferred the street.
Yeah.
So and again, cause hapa ni life free. Hakuna mtu akukuambia sijui don't do this, do this. Yani
you're the king and the ruler.
Wendo kusema hapo.
Yeah. Lakini ni life hard bado.
Very hard, cause each time I was a kid. I was 9 years old. So what used to happen is also big wangenitumia kwenda ku get food. Kwa tunaenda kwa mahoteli, tuna get ile mafood zimebakishwa. Alafu tuna boil. Alafu tuna dish. Okay. So what used to happen is when you come back with the food, because you're the kid, right? Your food inaboiliwa kwa mkebe ya rangi. Yeah, ilikuwa inaitwa meda. Yeah, so inaboiliwa kwa mkebe ya rangi na kwa maji na kwa na kasup kiasi, ka stew hivi buffet.
Evil.
Yeah, so
Kalongo yani
yeah, ukweli. So because asa ni wengi na ni wasa wabigi asa wanaweza chukua hiyo food ikiwa hapo bado inachemka. So what used to happen is we would tunaweka carton box chini, then tunamwaga hiyo food. So by the time hiyo food inafikia hiyo carton box, hiyo food imeisha, my friend.
Really?
Yeah.
So, around how many?
Around 10 guys. Yeah. Kwa base moja. So out a dish your food na wendo ile na kuileta.
Your story imeishia hapo.
Story inaishia hapo.
I mean, obviously living on the streets makes you different, make a tough person, it makes you hard-hearted. How did it change you, and how have you been able to come out of that mental place?
I would say God is very faithful. Yani inaweza kuwa tu God. Yeah, it could only be God, yani, and of course sometimes I sit and think God wanted me to go through that kind of life so that I would understand what they go through, and so that probably I would be a living testimony to them that are on the streets, so that if right now I go to the streets and tell the kids, manze mimi nilikuwa hapa na God amenitoa hapa na anaweza kutoa pia, they will believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now and this is now the message I believe that God actually put in you, because a lot of people then get hope not just from your story but from your music as well.
Yeah.
Nasikia uli spend time after kushikwa na kanjo kwa cell, and that's the beginning of your mental shift and transformation yako. Tuambie nini happen?
I got born again in the cell.
Yeah.
So there's this guy who used to really preach in the cell. Na tumeshikwa si wote, you know. So every morning, like at 5 o'clock, jamaa anaamka anaanza ma praise and worship, and look, those people who think they are very tough in life, yani wale wasaona ngani wako na kichwa ngumu, kuna mahali hufika wananyenyekea kwa God viril.
Really?
Because guys used to sing that.
Yeah.
Tukiwa cell sasa. Wasa wana worship.
Yeah.
You know, so this guy used to preach, and of course you would ask yourself, why is he preaching? Why is he here in the first place? But I got that conviction, yani. I felt yani God ananispikia. So I decided to get born again. And I think that was the beginning of you know, the change in my life. Yeah.
Absolutely. Like but looking at that moment of you're in cell, you're there for a month, you're a young man, you don't know what's going to happen, when you're going to get out, and realizing that actually I can't rely on myself anymore, and I need something bigger than me. Talk to us a little bit about that before we talk about your music.
Of course, I had known about God because my mother really used to teach about God. My mother had been born again for the entire life, the entire time that I knew her. So si ati sikuwa najua about God, but hiyo tu kuamua sasa unataka ku live for God, ili happen hiyo day.
Okay.
So of course I had known about God. I had heard about God. We us guys used to pray with my mother before we sleep and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing. High school. How did high school happen? From living on the streets to being arrested for a month to getting saved, and somehow you managed to make it. Ulienda wapi, by the way?
High school, Hospital Hill.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah, so so I met a guy who had a children's home before I left street.
Okay.
He's actually the one who took me back to my mom. So this guy decided to pay my school fees. So I went cleared primary, then they took me to high school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kurudi kwa madhi ilikuwa aje?
Kurudi kwa madhi haikuwa rahisi hivyo, kwa sababu sasa tena nimerudi ile place ya kuambiwa osha vyombo na nini. Because I'm the only kid, you know.
Yeah.
So mimi ndo nilikuwa mdem na boy bado. So mimi ndo naosha hao, ndafua nguo nini, ndo mother aende hustle. So tena ku come back to that place is not easy, you know.
Your transition
and of course coming back to a place where you need to listen to someone and you need to be obedient. Na umezoea wewe ndo unasemaga kile unataka kufanya, you know. You decide what you want to do. But ilikuwa poa kwa sababu ilinisaidia kujua kuishi na msee mwingine, you know. It helped me to know how to live with a person without having to have
without
fight
issues
with
and
them.
conflict. Yeah.
Because on streets, you know, we could be seated like this and you start fighting over nothing.
Really?
I was saying, because there are times sikumenyesha, sasa tunakaa place tunawasha moto ya taya.
Yeah.
Msee atachota ile moto akurushie kwa kiatu. Yani hivyo tu. Yani huyo msee ana feel tu poa.
Anakuangushia hivyo.
Ana feel poa ukiumia. So at least it taught me again how to just live with people in peace and you know, na kumaendo wase
This is incredible. Your story is an incredible one, and I'm so glad that you're sharing. You wrote your first song ukiwa Form 1?
Yeah, Form 1.
Now can release Form 2. Niambie.
Yeah. So at Form 1, I used to sing in church sometimes. So I went to church someday and did a presentation, and someone felt it was so good. Yeah. So he asked me what I do, where I am. Maisha yangu iko aje. I took him to my place, showed him my place. Akaona, manze mzee ana need help. So yeah, he introduced me to other people, DK at that time.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So someday when I was in school, we actually had an exam that day. Jioni. I was called outside. Someone is calling me. Huyo ni DK. Na niko na exam. Akaniambia niaje tunaenda studio saa hii tu.
Hivyo tu?
Yeah. Manze sikufanya hiyo exam. Because this is something you've been longing for.
Exactly,
Yani, you've been thinking, wow, sasa ndaifanya nini na hii music.
But isn't it funny when something you've been waiting for so long shows up, there's always something else that you're supposed to do?
Manze.
Yeah.
Mimi nilihepa.
But ni sawa, so you just go with your heart. Na ulienda na roho yako.
Yeah, so I went to the studio, met this guy, Jackie B. He recorded my first song. Then, of course, DK is the one who did everything about the song, of course, could promote, taking it to also other people to listen to it. Yeah, then later I met a pastor, he's called Pastor Andrew Mwiru. He decided to do my video also for free.
Wow.
So guys just did my song for free, and they're the ones who took it wherever it went. And one Sunday we were seated with my mother and we watched the song on TV.
Madhe alikuwa anajishika.
Madhe hiyo siku yani ungedhania madhe unisupport sana. Because before that she never wanted to hear anything about music. Because he alijua so nitaanza kumget into another expense again. Itisha ya studio, and of course tuko hapa mambo ya shule nini. She never wanted to hear about music.
Utakwenda shule usome kitu yani itakuletea do nini hizo vitu zote.
Tumeteseka hii maisha yote alafu unakuja kusema you wanna be an artist.
How?
Aje, you know. But it went through, and from then she started supporting me. Aliona kumbe ni kitu poa. Yeah. So when I cleared high school now, I did the second song, Amazing Grace.
Amazing Grace. Your songs are beautiful in terms of the message, and your voice. Obviously, this is what you were meant to do. God made you for this particular reason. In terms of encouraging people who have been where you've been, who sometimes can listen to your song and say, oh my gosh, that's actually exactly what I'm going through. How do you write your music? How do you want to be known in terms of the message? Mtu akisikia Guardian Angel hata akiwa Hollywood Grammys anajua that's that guy who lifts people up from a dark place with his music. Tell me about that part, coming up with your brand.
Of course, my brand, and of course my music as well, is I learned something. I learned in the word that everything of the world will pass, but the word of God will remain. All right? So I do not want to sing a song that people will listen to for 1 month and they don't want to listen to it anymore. So I thought I would want to write a message that will remain, which is the word of God. So basically ni kuchukua word ya God alafu imbe. Alafu hiyo itakuwa relevant kila time. You know, the word of God will always be relevant. Right? So that's what it is about. And of course praying a lot again for God to give you inspiration. And ni prayer tu na kuread word. Alafu utafute tune sasa wewe mwenyewe.
Even ndio basi.
Alafu in the studio.
Okay. How is your mom doing today? How are you doing today?
I am doing good by the grace of God. I thank God sana for how I am today. Of course I'm not where I want to be, but I am in a good place. I'm not where I used to be.
Right. And mom?
And my mom, oh my God, my mom is called Faith, by the way.
Oh, good name.
You've not seen a woman who has great faith. She's in Canada.
Oh, she is. We do stream live. I said that earlier.
Yeah, of course.
Faith, we say hello, a big hello to you. We love your son, and we thank you for everything you did to him.
Asante.
So she ended up in Canada.
Yeah.
Okay.
She has great faith.
Yeah.
She went to buy some clothes someday, and she was telling those guys, "Manze, hurry up, banamia, na miss flight." And she has no flight. She's not going to anywhere. Ana hata passport.
Yeah.
Ukaona vile ameharakisha watu wamalize kushona nguo, ana miss flight. I was thinking, what is she doing? Mpaka anani embarrass, you know. Mimi nimeanza kuimba juzi bana, alafu mama anakuja kupigia watu kelele, ana miss flight, alafu tukaenda pale kwa gari za Mwiki, tukaenda home.
Yeah.
1 week later, her boss is asking her, now that this guy has cleared high school, si anaweza jitegemea? My mom is like, yeah, anaweza. So why don't I go with you to my place? So that tunaweza endelea kuwork. Yeah, and that's how she ended up going to Canada.
That's amazing.
Even out of your faith, yani, and I feel, you know, and it is great.
Amazing. We just love it. We
God
love
is
it.
faithful.
No, really, your story is a beautiful one because it's a story of hope and faith, and it's a story of, it doesn't matter where you come from.
Yeah.
Everything is about where you're going and where God is taking you.
Yeah.
Where God is taking you.